Every major city has a focal point, but if you want to understand Tashkent, you have to stand right here, in the absolute center of Amir Tamer Square at sunset. This transit map illustrates exactly how literal that center is. Beneath the pavement, the city's primary red and green subway lines intersect at this exact coordinate. Looking at this radial diagram, you can see the broader urban design. The major streets don't run in a standard grid. They radiate outward from this single node, like the spokes of a massive wheel. Because the physical infrastructure of Tashkent revolves around this precise plot of land, whoever places their symbol on this square dictates the spiritual and political identity of the entire nation. Right now, that center is occupied by a massive bronze statue of Amir Tamer, the legendary 14th century Central Asian conqueror, mounted on horseback. But he is relatively new here. This timeline traces the long, turbulent history of this specific pedestal. Starting in 1882, it was established for Tsarist projection. Moving into the mid-20th century, the space hosted communist icons like Stalin. Finally, scanning right, we reach 1994, when the newly independent government installed Amir Tamer. The base bears the inscription, "Strength is in Justice," a deliberate stake in the ground for the newly restored national pride. This pedestal functions as a visual record of state power and erasure, where every regime has physically scrubbed the center of the city to write their own story. If you stand at the base of the statue and look to your left, you are immediately confronted by a towering structure, Hotel Uzbekistan. Built in 1974, it is a masterclass in brutalist architecture, a style defined by massive, imposing concrete forms and raw, unadorned materials. It features a giant, sweeping curved volume and a relentless, dense grid of geometric sunshades covering the facade. For decades, this building functioned as the premier hub for foreign dignitaries and tourists. It was designed to project the imposing, inescapable glory of the communist state to anyone visiting Tashkent. Even today, that massive concrete grid physically embodies the heavy, rigid legacy of the Soviet era, continuing to enclose the left flank of the square. Now, pivot across the square to your right. The visual collision is immediate. Here sits the Amir Temur Museum. Constructed after independence, its gleaming white columns and rippling blue dome are a sharp rejection of Soviet brutalism. Instead, the architects utilized a Timurid revival style, pulling directly from the 14th century Islamic architectural traditions of monumental scale and vibrant tile work. Inside, the space commits entirely to extreme opulence. You stand directly under a massive gold dome, illuminated by intricate, oversized crystal chandeliers. The building operates as a cultural vault. It protects over 5,000 ancient manuscripts, weapons, and artifacts tracing the lineage of Amir Temur. By placing this glittering homage to indigenous history directly across from the concrete Soviet hotel, the city uses architecture to balance its own scales, asserting its independent heritage against its colonial past. Visual artists and photographers have caught on to this deliberate layout, exploiting the geography to capture the country's ideological tension in a single exposure. By framing the ancient national hero on horseback directly against the dense dystopian grid of Hotel Uzbekistan behind him, you create a striking contrast. This specific composition traps two completely opposing eras of history in one frame, perfectly visualizing the complex dual identity of modern Uzbekistan. But the square is defined by what happens when you step away from the static bronze and concrete, flowing out into the surrounding streets. In the secondary architectural ring, you find the Tashkent chimes, twin classical brick clock towers that add an elegant, grounded rhythm to the surrounding parkland. The International Forums Palace stands nearby, a massive, contemporary structure that completes the architectural surroundings by broadcasting the scale and confidence of a modernized state. By surrounding the historical center with active civic and diplomatic spaces, the city avoids turning the square into a dead, cordoned-off museum. The massive state architecture seamlessly absorbs the flow of daily, working life. That daily life becomes deeply personal when you reach Silgo Street, locally known as Broadway. Here, the imposing scale drops down to the human level. packed with local street artists, vendors, and strolling crowds under strings of warm evening lights. This shift in atmosphere completely changes the rhythm of a visit. What starts as a quick 30-minute photo op at a monument easily stretches into a 2-hour walk through the actual living culture of the city. This conceptual diagram maps out exactly what we've just walked through. You have the heavy Soviet past on one side, the brilliant blue domes of national revival on the other, all anchored by a central symbol of strength, and surrounded by a vibrant, modern lifestyle. Amir Temur Square functions as a perfectly readable, walkable scale model of the nation itself. In just a few hundred yards, you physically step through the 3 distinct layers that make up Uzbekistan's modern soul.